It is my pleasure to introduce Ravi Mhatre. He's the co-founder and managing partner with Lightspeed Venture Partners. Ravi, pleasure.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
What we want to draw from you is the lessons learned. You started this way back in '95 as a fund. At that time,
I started in venture capital in 1995,
absolutely.
and we formed Lightspeed in late 1999.
99. You know, at that time, Indian entrepreneurs had just come into being in late 80s to 90s. We were not even thinking as much about venture capital business, but they're still, successful entrepreneurs in their own way. Your father is a very successful man in his own way. As a second generation, you're a very classic example compared to the other VCs on Sand Hill Road. Your father must have been a great inspiration for you in this.
He was. He came to this country in the 50s to get his graduate education, and then, spent time actually initially. He had a PhD in biochemistry, doing research for pharmaceutical companies, and over time he migrated more into management. And then ultimately in the 80s, we, as a family, moved to Silicon Valley in the early 80s, and he essentially became the CEO of a biotech startup. And I didn't have as a venture capitalist now, with 17 years of venture capital experience, I have a much more deep appreciation for what he accomplished, essentially coming to this country as an immigrant, getting an education but being a foreigner, and essentially starting off in the back office, moving into management, then becoming a CEO of a company at the time which had no revenues. He ultimately grew that to a company with several hundred millions of revenues, that's quite an impressive feat. It made a huge impression on me, to see the journey that he went through, and I think it inspired me both in terms of being excited about science and technology. On the one hand, I went on to get electrical engineering, computer science, and then also MBA from Stanford. It inspired me in that way, but I think more importantly inspired me in terms of seeing the huge kind of community of talent in terms of people with some type of Indus affiliation or Indian origin, who are here, who are doing really amazing things in terms of developing technology, and then just that desire, much like my father had, to then move into kind of being able to be entrepreneurs and have a more direct ability to impact or to see the sort of the impact of what they would design and that aspiration. And so I always I think through that example wanted to be involved in that process of sort of seeing and being part of the assistance of helping people, and because I was connected into sort of the Indian kind of ecosystem, wanting to be a part of seeing if I could be part of the process of helping people see their ideas come into be instantiated as new businesses and help them grow those. So
in some way it was natural for you to follow that path. You yourself became an entrepreneur before you transitioned to venture capital. So let's spend a little bit of time on your journey for entrepreneurship. Then more important, I would ask you about the jump to the VC part.
Sure. I originally spent time working with some startups while I was in between years when I was at business school at Stanford, and then when I graduated, I actually joined a company called Silicon Graphics, which was beyond the startup phase, but it was still a very high growth, emerging company in Silicon Valley, and really kind of got a direct sort of understanding. Industay was the company that its claim to fame now is that it actually built and used to occupy the campus where Google now lives. But got a really good understanding of a company going through hypergrowth and what it means to try to ship product and build a new market, build a large new market as a company that hadn't existed a few years ago. And then in terms of my transition to venture capital, I really was excited about all the innovation at the time happening in terms of computer workstations. This was in the mid 1990s. It was before the internet actually had become big. But one of the guys who was a founder at Silicon Graphics, Jim Clark, actually left around the time I was at Silicon Graphics to start a company called Netscape, which was really one of the foundational seminal companies that really developed the internet. he partnered up with Mark Andreessen and they started the company. And I think I saw that, and I really got excited about the whole new field of technology that was opening up with the internet, and decided that, as opposed to being inside of one company, I wanted to see if there was a way that I could participate in a lot of the new company formation that I saw happening around the internet, and made the decision that that being in venture capital would be an exciting way to try to do that. And so in 1995, I actually got into the venture capital industry.
This is exciting. In the last decade, I used to see MBAs especially talking about joining firms like McKinsey and Boston Consulting and others. Now people say, how do I become a venture capitalist? You can't become a venture capitalist just like that. So I think it'll be good to learn from you, for all these aspiring youngsters. What does it take to transition from a professional either to an entrepreneur, or if you're thinking of becoming a venture capitalist? It's a huge curve.
It is, and I would say there's no one right path. I mean, and that's what the best advice I ever got was that there are many paths. I'm wondering if the person who watches this video will know very well who gave me that advice, and it was the best piece of advice I ever got, because I think what you really have to do is follow your passion. And my passion, when I got out of business school at Stanford, was really technology. And actually, early on, SGI, Silicon Graphics, was a company that did a lot of things with virtual reality and computer graphics early on. And for whatever reason, that was an area I was incredibly passionate about. I just loved the idea that computers could create a virtual world in which you could, have a suspended reality, I guess, from the real world you live in, and go and interact in a virtual environment. And so I was incredibly passionate, and it drove me to really go, even though they weren't looking for a person that looked like me in terms of my background, to go get a job and convince them to hire me at Silicon Graphics. And it turned out that company, it grew wildly. It was wildly successful while I was there, and I met a lot of other smart people and talented people from the technology ecosystem who were also attracted to go there. And it turned out I followed my passion, and the result of that was I ended up with both an understanding of a lot of technologies that were going to lead to the next generation of startups. SGI was kind of pivotal in where some of the back-end technologies for the internet came from. It was a place where I developed a network of people who went on to start all kinds of other interesting companies and got involved with all kinds of other interesting companies. So it was really my passion led me to pursue, a career in a specific company that ended up being the setup for why I was even an interesting candidate for venture capital firms to want to try to recruit or hire.
An added responsibility, which is that you're managing limited partners' money, where you have to have returns at the same time. So passion obviously is there. So when you entered in 99 and started Lightspeed Ventures, and now, obviously there's a lot more experience. But in terms of returns, that is something that you have to obviously keep in mind all the time. How do you think the game has evolved in the last decade or so? When you look at the fund back then and your current fund now?
To be honest, the Lightspeed, the firm, we founded it. It's interesting. I've actually, the place where I've been an entrepreneur has been in venture capital with my three other co-founders. We formed a firm in 1999, and now it's, I guess, 13 or 14 years later, and it's been a terrific journey. But the business itself, what we were passionate about was working with entrepreneurs at the early stage and finding people who are incredibly talented, who had disruptive ideas, and we really felt that we could be additive partners to these entrepreneurs at the early stage to really help them figure out, there's a lot of lessons around how to form, if there's an idea, how to form the company around that, a lot of lessons around that are repeat lessons in terms of how do you build the best product, how do you then take that product to the market, how do you do it in a way that you can really win in a small market and then own that niche as it grows to be bigger and be a dominant company. And we wanted to help entrepreneurs really actualize on that. That's what our passion was. And that business really has not, the idea, the quintessential thing you do as a venture capitalist with early stage investing has not changed that much. It's really about, on the front end, spending a lot of time with people who are, who may not be experienced in business, but who are, really excited about technology, really excited about the next internet idea that they have, or somebody who's been working on a file system at Google or somewhere, and now they want to go out and build a really interesting new disruptive piece of infrastructure and do it on their own. It's helping these people who have really, those are that's the lifeblood, the heartbeat of Silicon Valley, are these really talented people, and there frankly are a lot of them of Indus origin, but they may not have the experience of, hey, how do I, everything, simple things, incorporate to, if I'm going to, now be out on my own and I have to recruit a team and we actually have to ship some kind of a product and find customers for that. How do we do those things? So, so as a venture capitalist, that's a place where we can play a really valuable role, but it takes a lot of time to, you meet a lot of people on the front end. You find the people, it's a very personal business, who you think are going to have the, the gumption to really go out and want to do it, and there's the highs and the lows, as everybody says, who are going to stick to it and really find those people who you think have the capability that you can really help them be successful and be more successful than they are on their own. And that's a large part of what we do, and that, I think, it continues to this day, and that's why I'm excited about venture capital. I'm excited that Silicon Valley is as vibrant as ever, and being here at TiEcon in 2012, it's I became a charter member of TI. I think in 1995 was my first year as a charter member, and the exciting thing is here we are. It's 17 years later. And the vibrancy there, I mean, it's even more now. I mean, just it's exciting to see that Silicon Valley is alive and well, and that there's a huge community of people here who are just the same as they were 10 years ago. I mean, it's a different set of people, but who are, have lots of great, education and training and ideas and optimism, and what they need is to some extent to find people who can, on the other side have experience, who can help them really, figure out how to make the leap and be successful in making that leap to going and doing things on their own. And that's kind of what TI is all about.
Finally, you are, I think, in a better position to answer this, because Indian origin parents, and you were born and brought up here. Why do you think Indians have done so amazingly well in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think if, my personal view of it is it's amazing. If you look at the Indian diaspora, Indians have gone to many countries outside of India and done incredibly well in lots of places. And I think Silicon Valley it's just not an exception. I mean, I find that there are a lot of people of Indian origin who are here, who are well educated. They tend to be incredibly bright. I mean, maybe it just comes back to there's the old saying of people who are immigrants, they work that much harder. They feel that they want to contribute. They have something to prove. They have a chip on their shoulder. But it's always exciting to me. I mean, and I went back and looked at it. As a firm, Lightspeed, we're very broad in the kind of entrepreneurs we work with. But I was surprised with the number of really brilliant, Indus origin founders that the firm has worked with and that I've personally worked with. And there are a lot of people who, have gone to IIT on the technical side, and, I think already within India that's a very, rarefied and, kind of high-powered group of people. And so a lot of those people who go through that educational system in India and then come here, there just are a lot of really brilliant, smart, enthusiastic people with, of Indus origin who are here in the Valley, and it's a pleasure to be able to meet them and, kind of help the ones who are excited about wanting to start companies. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.